Hi, my name is Brian Krug, and I'm a technical lead for Syngenta Flowers. And in this video, we're going to cover some basic culture guidelines for a pot mum crop that's targeted for a fall finish. First, we're going to talk about propagation. And when we're talking about propagating pot mums, we're almost always talking about using the direct stick method. The direct stick method is simply taking our unrooted cuttings and putting them right into our finished pot. This circumvents the liner stage because chrysanthemums are so easy to root and very quick. That liner stage and a transplant is just an extra step that isn't needed, and it will slow down our process. So we're going to use our direct stick method. When we are propagating, we want to make sure that we're using night interruption. This will make sure that we have long days so that our flowers are not initiated on the plants. And the best way to get night interruption is to provide about 2 to 4 micromoles per meter squared per second from 10 o'clock at night to 2 o'clock in the morning. We're going to use enough mist just to keep these plants hydrated. We don't want them to wilt, but we don't want to use too much mist because it will slow down our propagation process and slow down our rooting. Using a rooting hormone is recommended. We like to use a 200 part per million spray of a water-soluble KIVA that's applied over the top of the cuttings after they have been stuck. It is possible to do a stem dip, and you can get a hormone-treated unrooted cutting from Syngenta Flowers. If you're interested in that, talk to the broker that you make your sales through and see how we can get that arranged. You want to fertilize your cuttings at 200 to 300 parts per million nitrogen about 3 days after sticking. At this point, those plants are providing a callus, and this callus can take up fertilizer through that material and start feeding that plant. We're going to get root emergence about 5 to 7 days after sticking. As I mentioned before, this is a really fast crop to root, which is why we're using the direct stick method. Finally, we want to make sure that we're not getting too much stretch in those plants during propagation. So using an application of a PGR like B9 at 1500 to 2500 parts per million is a good place to start to control the height of the plants before you do the pinching. Speaking of pinching, we're going to pinch the plants when the roots reach the bottom of the pot, and we have about 3/4 of an inch to an inch of new growth from that unrooted cutting after it's been rooted in the pot. When we do the pinch, we're going to remove about 1/2 to an inch of shoot material, leaving about 5 to 6 nodes on the remaining plant. This makes sure that we have enough nodes to get adequate branching to get a nice finished plant. To give you an idea of what that pinch looks like, on this side of the picture, on the dotted line, you'll see plants that have been pinched already, and on this side of the picture, you'll see plants that have not been pinched yet. So that gives you an idea of what to look at for the before and after look of a pinched chrysanthemum. At the same time that you're pinching, you're going to stop night interruption. And for a fall crop that, say, is targeted for a finish or for a Thanksgiving Day sale, natural short days is occurring throughout North America. So you don't have to do any black clothing or anything, but you do need to make sure that you have no light present. That's light pollution from head house lamps or lights in a parking lot or street lights. Now that we've moved into short days and we're initiating flowers on that plant, we're into the finishing stages of this crop. We're going to use a complete fertilizer of about 200 to 300 parts per million nitrogen, and we're going to try to maintain a pH of our substrate of 5.8 to 6.2. And then when we're looking at our electrical conductivity, if we're testing using the SME method, 2 to 3.5 millisiemens per centimeter, or a pour through of 2.5 to 4.5 millisiemens per centimeter. Now, as we get towards the end of our crop, about 2 to 3 weeks before we're going to sell, we want to reduce or eliminate all fertilizer from our irrigation water to make sure that we have a better post-harvest life for our consumer after selling it. So our target for our EC comes down to a 1 to a 1.75 if we're using SME, or 2.25 to 2.5 millisiemens per centimeter if we're using the pour-through method. For most of our cultivars, we don't need to worry about disc budding. Disc budding is when we remove one or multiple buds from the plant to make sure that we get the right structure that we want. But for modern breeding, we can do all of that with just cultivar selection. So in most cases, we are not going to need to do any disc budding. As with any crop, we want to make sure that we have a good preventative control plan in place for pests and diseases. And then at the end of our finishing, we want to be paying attention to plant height and having a PGR like B9 at 2,500 to 5,000 parts per million ready to use when the shoots are about 1.5 to 2 inches long. We want to catch it before the plant gets too elongated, because we can't make the plant shorter. We can just control height that the plant has potential for growing. So keeping control of that and being ready to apply that plant growth regulator when needed. It's going to depend on the cultivar and your growing conditions on when and how often you're going to need that plant growth regulator. I want to leave you with this guide, the Flower Development Guide. This is a guide that we have provided at Syngenta Flowers, where we have pictures of many of our popular Pop Mum cultivars 1, 2, 3, and 4 weeks before the plants are ready to ship. And this will give you an idea of how your crop is progressing in terms of bud development and flower development, so you know if your crop is on track or not. You can find this information and lots of other information to make sure that you are successful with your fall Pop Mum crop at the Syngenta Flowers website.